Most people walk through life believing that their mind is weak. They say, "I can't focus," or "I'm just not smart enough," as if the ability to learn were some gift handed out at birth, and they somehow missed their turn. But that's not true. The mind isn't weak, it's lazy, and not in a moral sense, not in a judgmental way, but in a deeply biological one. The brain's primary job isn't to make you brilliant, it's to keep you alive. Its number one mission, every second of every day, is to save energy. It's a survival machine, not a learning machine. Think about that for a moment. Every time you try to learn something new, every time you challenge yourself, stretch your attention, push into discomfort, your brain senses it as a potential threat. Why waste energy? It says, we're fine doing what we already know. That's why you feel resistance the moment you try to focus. That urge to check your phone, to get a snack, to scroll for just a minute, that's not weakness. That's the brain trying to protect the status quo. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. But if you don't learn how to override that instinct, it will quietly run your life. It will keep you small, comfortable, and stagnant while convincing you that it's keeping you safe. And here's the secret: resistance isn't your enemy. It's your compass. When your mind begins to resist, that's the signal that you're moving into the territory of growth. That's where the brain starts to change, where new circuits begin to form. The discomfort you feel when you start something new, reading a difficult book, practicing a hard skill, studying late into the night, that's literally your neurons working overtime, trying to build new pathways. The fog, the confusion, the frustration, it's not failure. It's the sound of your brain reorganizing itself. Most people misinterpret that feeling. They believe discomfort means they're not good enough or not cut out for it. But in reality, it means the system is working. You're challenging the old architecture of the mind, and that's never painless. You can't build new neural connections without breaking down old ones. Just like muscles tear before they grow, neurons must destabilize before they strengthen. So the next time you feel that inner resistance, don't retreat. Smile at it. Recognize it as a sign of progress. That's the signal that you're right where you should be. But understanding isn't enough. You have to act. You can't think your way through resistance. You have to train through it. The brain learns obedience through repetition. Every time you push past that initial friction, every time you choose focus over comfort, you're teaching your brain that effort is safe, that learning is not a threat. And with each repetition, the resistance weakens. You stop waiting for motivation and start relying on momentum. That's the difference between those who dream of changing their lives and those who actually do. One waits for permission, the other builds discipline. You might say, "But I just don't feel motivated." Of course you don't. You won't feel motivated until you start moving. Motivation doesn't precede action. It follows it. The act of beginning creates the chemistry of motivation. That's the trick your brain never tells you. You have to move first, then the energy comes. So stop waiting to feel ready. The mind will never hand you readiness. You have to take it from it. Learning to learn is really about learning to manage this conversation with yourself. The lazy brain will always whisper later. It will always suggest comfort disguised as logic. But if you learn to recognize that voice for what it is, an echo from a primitive past, you can transcend it. You can use it as fuel. The human mind has infinite capacity for growth, but it will only unlock when you prove you're willing to move through the wall of resistance again and again. You have to train your mind the way an athlete trains the body, not to eliminate struggle, but to get stronger because of it. The more you face the resistance, the faster you adapt, and eventually the voice that said, "You can't," becomes silent. Your brain was built to survive, but you were built to grow. Teach it to follow you. And once you stop obeying the lazy mind, you'll discover something extraordinary. Your mind was never weak. It was just waiting for you to take command. Motivation doesn't just fall from the sky. It isn't magic, and it's not something you wake up with one day just because you've decided to get serious about your life. Motivation is chemical, it's neurological, and it lives and dies with dopamine. That's the truth most people never understand. They think motivation is some mystical force that either shows up or doesn't, like luck. But in reality, it's your brain responding to patterns of reward and effort. It's not willpower you're lacking, it's the right kind of chemistry. Dopamine is the molecule of pursuit. It's the spark that drives you towards something, not the satisfaction you feel after you've achieved it. It's the reason you can work for hours when you feel progress, even if the goal is still miles away. It's what fuels curiosity, learning, and mastery, but it's also what makes scrolling through your phone so addictive. Those quick, easy rewards hijack the system. They flood your brain with dopamine without you earning it. And once your brain gets used to those quick hits, real learning, slow, deep, meaningful learning starts to feel unbearable. Because compared to instant gratification, effort feels like starvation. That's why most people can't stay focused for more than a few minutes. Their brain isn't broken, it's just been trained to expect pleasure without patience. But here's the good news, you can retrain it. You can rebuild the reward system so that effort itself becomes rewarding. That's how you take control of your motivation. You make dopamine serve your goals instead of your distractions. The key is in how you structure progress. The brain doesn't respond to big, abstract goals like become fluent in Spanish or master programming. It needs something tangible, measurable, and immediate to attach that dopamine to. You have to break the mountain into steps, into moments you can actually conquer. 10 new words today, 1 solved problem, 1 page read and understood then. And this part matters, you acknowledge it. You feel that little spark of satisfaction and let it count, because that's how you teach your brain that effort equals reward. That's how you keep the dopamine loop alive. When you do this consistently, something incredible happens. The brain begins to release dopamine not just when you finish something, but while you're doing it. It learns that the pursuit itself is exciting. That's the transformation that separates those who can stay obsessed with growth from those who quit when the novelty fades. You start to crave the process. You start to feel drawn toward effort rather than away from it. Learning becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The more you do, the more you want to do. But this also means you need to be careful what you reward. If you reward yourself for avoidance, for every time you take a break, check a notification, or give up, you're wiring your brain in the opposite direction. You're teaching it that escape brings pleasure. The same system that can turn you into a master learner can also turn you into a professional procrastinator. The circuitry doesn't care what you feed it. It just learns from what you repeat. So the discipline isn't just about effort. It's about attention. You have to pay attention to where your brain gets its dopamine from. You have to build a life where your small victories feed that system in a way that supports growth, not distraction. Every time you choose to stay with something hard, you're strengthening your chemistry for perseverance. Every time you give in to the easy hit, you weaken it. Eventually, this rewiring changes who you are. You stop chasing entertainment and start chasing improvement. You stop waiting for the perfect mood or the perfect conditions because you've learned that motivation doesn't come first, movement does. The act of beginning creates the very chemical you thought you were waiting for. That's the secret. Dopamine follows direction. It rewards what you pursue. If you feed it shallow rewards, it'll keep you small. But if you train it to love progress, it'll drive you to greatness. You don't wait for motivation, you generate it. And once you learn to make dopamine work for you, there's nothing left to stop you, because the pursuit itself becomes the reward. Now, let's talk about something most people completely misunderstand: the power of repetition. Everyone wants to learn fast, but almost no one wants to repeat. They think repetition is boring, mechanical, robotic. But the truth is, repetition isn't about mindless memorization. It's the rhythm through which your brain rewires itself. Every time you repeat something, you're not just going over the same material. You're literally reshaping the structure of your brain. You're strengthening the synaptic connections that encode that knowledge until they become part of you, effortless, automatic, permanent. The brain learns through fire and repetition. A new idea is like a weak signal trying to find its way through a noisy system. The first few times it barely makes it through. The neurons whisper to each other, unsure if the message is worth remembering. But each repetition tells the brain, hey, this matters, and the brain listens. It strengthens those connections, wraps them in myelin, the insulation that speeds up neural communication. And suddenly, what once took conscious effort now happens almost instantly. That's how you move from knowing something intellectually to embodying it instinctively. Think about how you learned to ride a bike or type without looking at the keys. The first attempts were awkward, clumsy, uncertain. You didn't understand balance or rhythm, you just kept trying. Each fall, each correction was data. Your brain recorded every wobble, every failure, until finally it built a perfect internal model. Then, one day, without even noticing it, you were just riding. That's not magic. That's neuroplasticity at work. Repetition made it automatic. But here's where most people go wrong. They stop too soon. They repeat until they can do something right once, not until they can't do it wrong. They memorize just enough to pass the test, not enough to own the knowledge. They confuse familiarity with mastery. Familiarity makes you feel like you know something, but mastery is when you can explain it, apply it, and adapt it in different situations. And that only comes from spaced, deliberate repetition, where each cycle deepens understanding rather than just reviewing the surface. This is why consistency beats intensity every single time. You don't have to study 10 hours in a day and then crash for a week. That's not how the brain consolidates information. What matters is rhythm, short, repeated sessions that tell the brain, keep this alive. When you revisit something again and again, especially right before you forget it, your brain reactivates the same circuits, strengthening them. That's how long-term memory is built, not through cramming, but through reactivation. And there's another layer to this. When you repeat something with variation, when you change the context slightly, teach it to someone else, or use it creatively, you force your brain to reconstruct the knowledge from multiple angles. That's how you move beyond mechanical repetition into flexible intelligence. Because real learning isn't about storing facts. It's about creating models that you can bend and use. So when you feel bored repeating something, remind yourself that boredom is not a signal to stop. It's a sign that your brain is beginning to automate. It's like forging a sword. The metal doesn't become strong because it's heated once. It's the constant heating, folding, and cooling that gives it strength. Your neural circuits are no different. Every repetition tempers them. Every cycle makes the pattern more stable, more precise, more alive. And what's fascinating is that once something becomes automatic, it frees up your mental energy to learn the next layer. The basics become background noise handled by the subconscious, while the conscious mind explores new connections. This is how mastery compounds. Each repetition today becomes the foundation for tomorrow's insight. So don't run from repetition, use it. Approach it with curiosity. Every time you go over something, ask yourself, what am I missing this time? That single question turns repetition into discovery. And that's where learning becomes alive, vibrant, even addictive, because you start seeing that repetition isn't stagnation. It's evolution happening in real time. When it comes to learning, there's one force that can make or break your progress: attention. Not talent, not ick, not even time. Attention is the currency of the mind. Whatever you pay it to grows. And that's the catch. Most people don't spend their attention. They leak it. They scatter it across 1,000 tiny distractions, and then wonder why they can't remember what they just read, or why studying feels like pushing through mud. But attention isn't just focus, it's energy, it's emotion. It's the quality of consciousness you bring to a moment. And when you learn how to direct it, everything changes. The mind doesn't absorb information just because your eyes are open or your ears are hearing. It learns when it cares, when something has emotional weight. That's why you can remember the lyrics to a song from 10 years ago, but forget a paragraph you read this morning. It's not about memory capacity, it's about meaning. Attention follows emotion. If you can make what you're learning emotionally significant, the brain will grab it and store it. This is where curiosity becomes a weapon. Curiosity isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, a muscle that strengthens the more you use it. When you approach something with curiosity, your brain shifts into exploration mode. Dopamine starts flowing, and suddenly, what felt like effort turns into play. The same neural systems that drive motivation now fuel learning. But you have to engage the question, not just the answer. You have to make the information matter to you. Ask yourself, why is this interesting? How does this connect to what I already know? What would happen if it were different? That kind of active questioning hooks your attention. It creates a feedback loop between knowledge and emotion. And attention, when fully harnessed, is incredibly powerful. Neuroscience shows that whatever you focus on literally changes the physical wiring of your brain. The neurons that fire together wire together. So if your attention is divided, constantly switching between your phone, your notes, your thoughts, you're not just being inefficient, you're training your brain to be distracted. Every time you multitask, you're teaching your neural circuits to expect interruption. You're carving grooves in your brain that make deep concentration harder the next time. That's why focused learning isn't just about effort. It's about environment. You have to design a space and a rhythm where your mind can stay anchored long enough for understanding to form. And understanding takes time. Real focus is uncomfortable at first because the mind is addicted to novelty. The first 5 minutes of studying feel like running uphill because your brain is searching for stimulation. But if you push through that initial resistance, if you sit long enough for the noise to settle, something beautiful happens. The mind drops deeper. You stop fighting for attention and start entering flow. That's where learning accelerates, not because you're forcing it, but because the whole system aligns toward one direction. But attention isn't just about external focus, it's also about internal stillness. When your mind is cluttered with anxiety, comparison, or self-criticism, it can't learn. Those thoughts drain cognitive bandwidth. That's why self-awareness is crucial. You have to notice when your mind drifts, not to punish yourself, but to bring it back gently over and over. That's the real practice, not control but return. Each return strengthens attention like a muscle being trained through resistance. And maybe the most overlooked part of all, attention isn't passive, it's active engagement. It's the willingness to wrestle with an idea until it makes sense. Too many people read without thinking, listen without processing, take notes without reflection. They confuse exposure with learning. But the brain only builds understanding when attention meets struggle, when you actively engage, question, summarize, visualize. You're signaling to your brain that this matters. That signal turns short-term data into long-term memory. The truth is, attention is how you show respect to your own potential. When you give something your full focus, you're saying, "This moment matters." You're telling your brain to build something lasting out of it. That's what transforms scattered effort into mastery, the ability to stay with what's hard until it becomes effortless. And here's the secret: you don't have to fight for attention. You have to train it, because whatever you consistently attend to, you become. Attention is the sculptor of the mind. What it shapes, you live.